Hello and welcome to Americans Learn. My name is Lauren and today I'm going to be looking at a member-chosen video. This is Ricin, the Perfect Poison. So great. I don't know that I've heard of Ricin before. If I have, it would have been on like Sawbones. So like the podcast. I'm gonna actually really click because like Ricin Sawbones. Have they done... Okay, so no, it doesn't look like Sawbones has done... I was like, they've done some episodes on poisons and stuff in the past, so I thought maybe they've done one on Ricin, so I don't know. I know nothing about this. I want to know why it's the perfect poison, though, for absolutely no reason. No reason at all. Anyway, before I make this even creepier and stranger and more off-putting, let's dive in. Also, if you haven't seen it, go check out my video on ASEN cosplay and costumes because I spent a lot of time on it and you should go watch it.
This episode is brought to you by CuriosityStream, a subscription streaming service that offers thousands of documentaries and non-fiction titles. Right now, for a limited time, you guys can get 25% off the cost of a subscription. More on them in a bit. It's one of the deadliest substances known to man. Ricin is a poison so toxic that a mere 3 milligrams, about 1/10 of a teaspoon's worth, is enough to kill a human. Odorless and tasteless once refined, it can be easily slipped into food or water, or even aerosolized and inhaled into the lungs. In its purest form, it's thought the amount obtained from a single castor bean could end 1,000 lives. Yet it's not the potency of Ricin that makes it such a nightmare, or even the lack of antidote. No, it's how damn easy it is to make. Naturally occurring in the seeds of the castor bean, Ricin can be cooked up by anyone with access to a coffee grinder and some basic chemistry knowledge.
Are we talking about how to make a poison in this episode?
Substances for poisoners, bioterrorists, and governments looking to cause carnage. Used as a weapon since prehistory, today we're telling the story of Ricin, nature's perfect poison.
Okay, great. Hope no psychopaths are watching this.
In terms of common household objects that are secretly nightmare murder machines, you couldn't get much more nightmarish or more murderous than Ricinius communis. The scientific name...
Have I seen the, like...
Ricinius...
Are the castor... Oh, okay, so can you find those, like, seeds everywhere? Because I feel like, they were called buckeyes or something? Like, we used to... My neighbor literally had a tree that had little seeds that looked like that in her yard.
Communism grows across the world, cropping up naturally in tropical climates. It also crops up in a whole lot of American gardens, where it's valued for its easy growing and pretty colors. And that's something of a mind, because it also creates one of the deadliest poisons known to man. Found inside the seeds of the castor bean plants, Ricin is to poisoners what the BFG was to the Doom franchise, the ultimate shortcut for just super killing everyone. As a toxin, Ricin latches onto cells and stops them from making...
He said the BFG, and I was like, I went to Roald Dahl and the Big Friendly Giant, so I'm like...
This means affected cells die en masse, leading to all sorts of horrible side effects for the animal they're a part of, and eventually leading to the ultimate side effect, death. Currently, there's no known antidote. Nothing doctors can do for you but try to alleviate your symptoms, cross their fingers, and hope for the best.
Jeez.
Since eating as few as 2 castor beans could get enough Ricin into your system to kill you, this is just a bit more than a little terrifying. But the good news is that accidental Ricin poisoning is relatively rare. Rather than coating the seeds, Ricin is found by pulping castor beans and separating out the different chemicals. Typically, this is when castor beans are mashed for producing castor oil, a process that happens on a grand scale each year without ever killing anyone. That means simply swallowing a castor bean almost certainly won't kill you, which is great news for negligent parents with toddlers determined to eat just about everything. Rather, it's...
Like I said, my neighbor had one of these trees. I'm like, now that he said it was like, yeah, she definitely had it.
A seed that releases the Ricin and makes it deadly. Down in Latin America, where castor beans are painted and made into jewelry, won't kill you, which is great.
I just need to re-listen to that. Sorry.
With toddlers determined to eat just about everything.
Hi, Shirley.
Rather, it's chewing the seed that releases the ricin and makes it deadly. Down in Latin America, where castor beans are painted and made into jewelry, this occasionally results in teenagers who chew on their bracelets getting hospitalized. Really, though, the chances of you unintentionally killing yourself with ricin are vanishingly small. It's when someone wants to deliberately poison you that things get terrifying. Ricin is painfully easy to make at home. While anyone wanting to kill someone with anthrax is going to have to first locate the spores, then get an advanced degree in microbiology to learn how to weaponize them, any would-be ricin poisoner just needs to nip to the store and buy some castor beans and a few other common products. After mashing the beans in their coffee grinder, the only step to getting a deadly poison is mastering chromatography, a process any chemistry undergrad could talk you through. And no, obviously, we're not going to go into any more detail than that.
Good God.
A piece of infotainment, not Exhibit A in future federal prosecution. Thank you very much. Okay.
But, I mean, he did give them... He still gave chromatography and said, go find a random chemist to talk you through it. Like, if they can talk you through it, that means it's easy. Like, this is still a lot of, like, information.
Seen how terrifyingly easy it is for someone to make ricin. The obvious question is, what would happen if they poisoned you with it? If you got a weak stomach, you should probably look away about now, because answering that question is where things are gonna get really icky. According to the Centers for Disease Control, there are 3 ways that you can be poisoned with ricin: ingesting it, being injected with it, and inhaling it. While each is about as fun as a porcupine enema, the specifics of their spiky embraces are wildly different. Let's start with the most obvious way of getting it into your system: ingesting it. Of all cases of ricin poisoning, this is by far the most common. It may be also the least pleasant. Within
no good.
Poisoned or just stupidly chewing on some castor beans, you'd start to feel nauseous. This would be followed by extreme abdominal cramps, then vomiting, then bloody diarrhea. Inside your gut, the ricin would be attacking the cells, killing them, causing them to die in a microscopic genocide. But the damage wouldn't stop there. As the poison spread into your bloodstream, other organs would be affected. Liver failure, kidney failure, even failure of your central nervous system are all possibilities. While accidental ricin ingestion only results in death around 6% of the time, this would still be a roller coaster of pain. But if anyone really wanted to kill you, they'd probably use the next method: injection. For assassins, injection has long been the favored method of ricin delivery, with good reason. Unlike ingesting ricin, injecting it doesn't quickly lead to cramps and projectile vomiting. Likely the first thing you'd notice is pain around the puncture wound, as the ricin attacks the muscle itself, causing necrosis of the flesh.
Oh, good.
Would really advise you against Googling. Within 5
no.
hours, general weakness and dizziness would...
I've seen some flesh necroses things before, only because that's just when your flesh like dies, right? And so it's like my mom got bit by a brown recluse when I was a kid, and so it's like that was gross to look at. But oof.
Overcome you, but it wouldn't be until approximately half a day had passed that the symptoms really hit. After that, your body would become a raft, tossed around in a storm of fever, headaches, vomiting, and falling blood pressure. For about 1 in 5 people, this storm eventually abates. For 83% of injection victims, though, it ends in multiple organ failure and death. Yet, it's the last type of ricin exposure that really scares people in biodefense. That's because inhaled
sounds like it.
only come from a terrorist attack. In contrast to swallowing or being injected with ricin, inhaling the poison won't lead to multiple organ failure. Instead, the ricin will settle into and attack your lungs with single-minded efficiency, destroying them as surely as if you'd inhaled napalm. Within hours, you'd feel pain in your chest, develop a cough and flu-like symptoms. Your lungs would fill with fluid, making it impossible to breathe. Your blood pressure would drop. By the time a day had passed, you'd almost certainly be dead. We say almost certainly because there's literally 0 cases in record of people dying after inhaling.
Well, thank God.
Experiments have been done on animals, but as far as we know,
that's rude.
No human has ever got ricin in their lungs. And this brings...
I mean, I do understand needing to have it done, because, like, we have to get an antidote in some kind of way, and the only way to do that, I get it. Still feels like animal cruelty, but... like, doing things in a lab setting is very different than doing it for real, but like it's a good way to get. But still, what a way to go! Poor animals.
It's one of the few bits of good news about this deadly poison. It really sucks for use in mass casualty attacks.
Oh,
Purified
good.
ricin from a single castor bean could theoretically kill 1,000 people. It's simply not cost-effective at such a scale. Put it this way, if you wanted to blanket a 100 square kilometer area with an aerosolized pathogen, you would need just a kilogram of anthrax. By contrast, you'd have to source 4 tons of ricin.
Oh my god.
Here, buying 4 tons of castor beans is absolutely going to land you.
That's a red flag.
Because ricin isn't cost-effective at scale doesn't mean it isn't a tempting weapon. Since prehistoric times, a whole lot of people have used it to kill a whole lot of their enemies in the most grotesque ways imaginable.
Yeah, sounds right. A history lesson. Let's go.
On the border between South Africa and Eswatini lies a cave with the
Eswatini.
deeply unimaginative name of Border Cave. But while its name might be boring, the same can't be said for its contents. One of the best preserved archaeological sites, Border Cave has yielded unique artifacts from 200 millennia of human history. In the context of today's video, though, it's mainly interesting for a specific discovery, one dating back to around 22,000 BC.
Dang!
Which suggests humans have been poisoning one another with ricin since the dawn of time.
We've been horrible forever! Yay!
The object in question is a notched wooden stick. When it was first discovered in the 1970s, it was thought to just be some cool old stick from history times. But when a chemical analysis was run in the 2010s, it was discovered that the stick had traces of ricin on it. It's now thought ancient tribes used this stick to coat their arrowheads in the poison, an ancient form of ricin injection. Chilling.
Dang!
Maybe it's not surprising to know our ancestors would seek to turn the humble castor bean into some kind of weapon. After all, that's exactly...
Oh, and that's definitely something that people found out, like, it's like, oh, someone ate it because they were eating, you know, they have to taste everything. You have to try everything. Have you seen the Star Kid show, Firebringer? Like, the one girl's job is to taste everything and decide if it's good to eat or bad to eat. It's like, someone would have eaten the thing and then they found out it was bad to eat, and then they're like, but, on the other hand, oh, we could kill people on purpose with this.
What countless modern governments have tried to do. Back in 1888,
Ah, what a mustache.
Stillmark became the first person in history to successfully extract and isolate ricin.
I mean, look at his little lippies. How does he do that with his mouth? Yeah, so. This is how he talks. I can absolutely tell. No, look at his... I don't know why his mouth bothers me so much, but his mouth really bugs me. It looks like a fish lips is what he's got.
Prior to this, the toxin had been mainly used by poisoners, but now it was possible to skip slipping someone castor bean mulch and go straight to ricin, and people suddenly got very interested. There was a problem, because by now the castor bean plant was everywhere. Not long before, castor oil had been found to make a great lubricant for train engines, massively increasing their efficiency. That meant a global uptick in cultivation of ricinious communists. So when news of Stillmark's discovery broke, governments were all like, wait, these super common plants we've got lying around could be used to make a weapon and none of our enemies have done it first? The first major push to turn ricin into a bioweapon came during World War I, with both the entente
Ah, well, that's not
powers
surprising.
already lobbing poison gas at one another. Scientists at the American University Experimental Station began figuring out how to take things to the next level.
Of course. I mean, World War I, like, was just a clusterfuck of using horrible things against each other. Like, oh my god. Not surprised that this is when this happened.
One major focus of their research was ricin. The American plans for the toxin took 2 distinct forms. The first was to find a way to coat bullets in it to increase their lethality, the modern equivalent of those ancient tribes dipping their arrowheads in the poison. The only trouble was that ricin can be destroyed by high temperatures, meaning firing those bullets would render them useless.
Yep,
so
pointless.
the US turned to another method, creating a deadly dust cloud. Remember earlier when we said inhaling ricin was a really nasty way to go? Well, America wanted to inflict that on Central Powers soldiers on a vast scale. The idea was that ricin would be refined into an ultra-fine powder and spread in the air over battlefields.
Yeah, but that really, like, there's no way to guarantee that your own guys don't get hit by that, and there's still civilians that are around that are gonna get absolutely destroyed. This is pre-Geneva Convention, it's not a war crime yet. Like, but still.
The only reason ricin dust isn't now as associated with World War I as mustard gas is that the military got cold feet when it became clear that there was no antidote. Before anyone could convince them to go ahead, the war came to an end. In the flurry of international conventions that followed, ricin was outlawed alongside other bio and chemical agents.
Good.
So, I guess that's it. Right, after World War I, all nations respectfully abided by these treaties and no governments ever again did anything evil with ricin.
Never.
Well, you're in for a bit of a shock if that's what you believe. As we're about to see, the 20th century would be...
It's like, humans can always get worse, my dude. It's like, I would never believe it. We always are figuring out ways to one-up each other in horribleness.
Full of states trying to use ricin as a weapon. Sadly, some of them would even succeed. Coming up next, more terrifying stories of ricin in modern history. But first, here's a quick word from today's sponsor, CuriosityStream. CuriosityStream is a subscription streaming service that offers thousands of documentaries and non-fiction titles from some of the world's best filmmakers, including exclusive originals. Think of it as the Netflix for nerds or the Hulu for history buffs. CuriosityStream is available on many platforms and web apps, including Roku, Android, Xbox One, smart TVs, iOS, Chromecast, Amazon Fire, Amazon Kindle, and Apple TV. So pretty much everywhere. It's also available everywhere in the world, and it's constantly updated with awesome, timely content. For example, this spring they added a documentary called Secret Nazi Weapons, based on the requests I see in the comment section of these videos. I'm guessing you guys are probably gonna like that one. But if you're enjoying today's video on the super terrifying topic of ricin, maybe you'll enjoy CuriosityStream's 3-part series, Pain, Pus, and Poison. It's terrifying. It's a mini-series. You can go to curiositystream.com/biographics for unlimited access to the world's top documentaries and non-fiction series. And right now, use the promo code biographics to save 25% off the cost of an annual subscription, which comes out to only $14.99 for the whole year.
Dang!
curiositystream.com/biographics.
Let me just see. I'm sorry. I just want to see when this came out 3 years ago, so probably not anymore.
% off, $14.99 for the whole year. And let's get back to the Ricin Chronicles.
The Hitman Team.
It was September the 7th, 1978, when Georgy Markov left his job at the BBC World Service in London and headed toward Waterloo Bridge. A Bulgarian playwright and satirist, Markov had once been close to the country's communist leadership before defecting at the height of the Cold War. Now he lived in England, from where he broadcast scathing takedowns of the Bulgarian regime. It was dangerous work. Already, Markov had survived 2 assassination attempts.
Dang.
Nor was he the only one. Just a fortnight earlier, fellow Bulgarian dissident Vladimir Kostov had been hospitalized in Paris with a mysterious sickness that nearly killed him. But if Markov was on the lookout for assassins that balmy fall day, it's doubtful he could have prepared himself for what came next. As he was waiting at a bus stop, the playwright felt a sharp pain in his leg. Turning around, he saw a man with an umbrella mutter an apology and get into a cab. It was a minor incident, one that could have been easily forgotten. It was also the moment that Markov's fate was sealed. That same night, Markov began to suffer muscle cramps and fever. The spot on his leg where the guy bumped him with the umbrella was in pain. He felt weak, dizzy. The very next day, Georgy Markov was hospitalized. Unable to figure out what was wrong with him, doctors initially assumed he was suffering from a weird infection. But since you've watched this far, you can already guess what was really going on. That man at the bus stop had been working for the Bulgarian secret police. His umbrella had been a weapon designed in...
God, they go into other... secret police are creepy. I'm watching Spy Family over on Chicanime right now, and there's like a whole secret police thing happening there. It's like... The fact that they go to other countries to stop people from bad-mouthing their regime, very terrifying. I hate that.
Collaboration with the KGB, one capable of firing a tiny pellet out of its tip and deep into a victim's flesh. And I mean tiny. The pellet now lodged in Markov was barely 1.5 millimeters in diameter, so small you'd assume it was incapable of causing damage, were it not for the tiny hole in its surface. A hole that held a couple of milligrams of purified ricin sealed with wax designed to melt after it entered a human body. Minutes after being injected into Markov, that pellet had released its deadly load. And now there was nothing that could be done. When Markov died of ricin poisoning on September the 11th, aged 49, doctors didn't even know it was ricin that had killed him. It wasn't until an autopsy uncovered the pellet that it became clear that Scotland Yard was dealing with an assassination. Even then, the truth of Markov's death wasn't confirmed until the early 1990s, when communism had finally collapsed in East.
I was gonna say, like, how did they figure this out? Because, like, they have the umbrella, it looks like. So, like, how many more times did this happen? Like, they had to have found at least one of these umbrellas.
In Europe. Today, Markov's murder remains the most high-profile instance of ricin poisoning in history. Yet he was far from the only one to suffer this fate in the Cold War. That other Bulgarian in Paris, the one who got mysteriously sick just 2 weeks before Markov, well, after Markov died, doctors went back and examined a small puncture wound on his back. Inside, they found an identical metal pellet. It was only by sheer fluke that the ricin dose in Kostov's pellet had been just under the lethal limit. Yet it wasn't just the Bulgarians who were messing around with ricin in those years. In 1981, communist Polish agent turned CIA asset Boris Korzak was shopping in a store in Virginia and he felt a sharp pain above his kidney. Within hours, he fell deathly ill with similar symptoms to Markov. Luckily, unlike Markov, he somehow survived. After these 3 assassination attempts, Ricin...
He did say about, like there is a percentage, like 1 in 5 will survive it.
...slipped off the menu for killing dissidents, replaced with more exotic agents like polonium or Novichok. But even as governments were beginning to turn their backs on the toxin, another scarier type of group was getting very interested in it. It's time we met the ricin terrorists.
Good.
Although it had been first mooted back in World War I, no one took serious steps to create inhalable ricin powder until the Second World War. In 1944, the US began to experiment with ricin dust at Utah's Dugway Proving Ground, where it was known as Agent W. The tests got pretty far. By spring, a form of Agent W that could be ground down to an ultrafine powder was all ready to go. The scientists hoped it could be sprayed out of planes over Germany. But it wasn't before long that the Americans ran slap into the major problem that ricin poses as a military weapon. There are simply far more cost-effective toxins out there. So they abandoned...
That's really... I'm still, like, shook. I'm like, you don't know what the wind is doing necessarily. You don't know how far it's gonna go, how much it's gonna get carried away. Like, you don't know who it's gonna hit. Like, that's the danger with, like, a lot of these powder stuff. It's just, like, you cannot control it, especially if you're dropping it out of a plane. But, like, you have no idea who's gonna be there. Like... How many potential, like, civilian casualties or friendly fire casualties are you, like, willing to risk? Like, it feels like, even not from a financial standpoint, the cost benefit of that seems really wildly skewed. It doesn't... I don't know. I'm just like, it just doesn't make sense to, like, use something so incontrollable.
Research, just as the British and French would abandon theirs, just as Iraq in the 1980s would give up its plan to create ricin bombs. Yet all this research firmly established one unalterable fact. Powdered ricin that could be breathed in was super deadly. It might not be useful for killing hundreds in one go, but if you set your sights a little lower, if your main goal was to cause mass panic with deaths as a bonus, well, suddenly inhalable ricin was looking very tempting. The first to try and jump...
That's how I see without my glasses, by the way. This is very accurate to how I see things if I'm not wearing my contacts or my glasses. This is almost... They got me.
You set your sights a little lower if your main goal was to cause mass panic with deaths as a bonus, well, suddenly inhalable ricin was looking very tempting. The first to try and jump on this bandwagon were America's far-right extremists. In 1991, the feds busted a plot to kill US Marshals with ricin, either absorbed through the skin or inhaled. 4 anti-government plotters went down. Across the next decade, several more militia group members were arrested for either owning or trying to make ricin. But it wouldn't be until the 21st century that ricin really exploded into American nightmares. On October 15th, 2003, alarms went off at a South Carolina mail processing facility. Just 2 years earlier, in the fall of 2001, anthrax-laced letters had paralyzed the US postal system, sickening 17 people and killing 5. In the aftermath of the Amerithrax attacks, the US had invested colossal sums in screening mail for biological contaminants. And now that investment was paying off. That day, a letter was isolated at the South Carolina facility. Inside was a small metal vial and 2 typewritten notes. The first one helpfully declared, "Caution, ricin poison enclosed in sealed container.
Thanks.
Do not open without proper protection." The second stated the attacker's demand. Calling him or herself fallen angel, they promised to turn DC into a ghost town. Unless, that is, the government repealed new interstate trucking laws. Wait, so, hold on a minute. Yep, it turns out that the first ricin letter attack in US history was by someone majorly pissed off with minor changes to federal trucking regulations. And really minor.
That does feel very American, not gonna lie.
One that most concerned Fallen Angel was a 2-hour increase in legally allotted sleep time for long-distance drivers. And it's here that we get to one of the oddest aspects of Ricin. Because it's so easy to manufacture, it doesn't just attract governments, terrorists, and Walter White. It also attracts fruitcakes, loonies, and weirdos. People who, if they tried to make a bomb, would probably blow their own hands off, but who are still capable of schlubbing to the store and buying some castor beans and a pack of envelopes. But while this ease of production increases the chance of idiots getting involved in bioterrorism, it also means Ricin letters are way less of a problem than those containing anthrax. A few days after the South Carolina letter, another Ricin envelope for Fallen Angel was found in a White House mail processing facility. Months later, in February 2004, Ricin powder from a suspected burst envelope was found at an office building on Capitol Hill. Terrifying as this must have been for the staffers who were to be decontaminated, that was the end of it. There were no more letters from Fallen Angel, no attempts to turn DC into a ghost town. The trucking regulations that had inspired the attack were never repealed. In the end, the 2003 Ricin letters had sickened no one, changed nothing, and killed nobody. Still, that wouldn't stop others from trying again in the very near future.
Okay. Confederacy of Dunces. Wonderful.
It's not often that the tale of a deadly toxin turns into absurdist comedy, but that's what's about to happen here.
Excellent.
There's simply no way we can tell the story of the 2013 Ricin letters without it sounding goofy as hell. Despite being perhaps the dumbest series of bioterror attacks ever perpetrated, the story of the 2013 letters started off fairly dark. On April the 15th, a letter addressed to GOP Senator Roger Wicker set off alarms at the Capitol when it tested positive for ricin. The news broke the same damn day 2 pressure cooker bombs exploded at the Boston Marathon, raising the specter of a coordinated series of attacks. When another letter, this one addressed to Barack Obama, tested positive 2 days later, it seemed like a terrorist cell might be out to cause carnage in America. But then things started to get
because it looks like one to a GOP, one to Barack Obama.
Down in Mississippi, a local judge also received a Ricin letter, an unlikely target for any international terrorists. Then there were the letters themselves. Each ended with the phrase, "I am KC, and I approve this message." When the feds did some Googling, it turns out I am KC and I approve this message was the sign-off used by a small-town Elvis impersonator, Paul Kevin Curtis. It gets crazier than that, though. Despite arresting Curtis, the FBI quickly figured out that he hadn't mailed the ricin. Instead, a local karate instructor with a grudge against Curtis's success on the Elvis circuit had sent the letters to frame him for terrorism. And yes, that is a real sentence that I just had to say.
A local Mississippian karate instructor was jealous of an Elvis impersonator in his area, so he decided to frame him for terrorism. And it seems like the Boston Marathon bombings just happened at the same time, and that's a coincidence.
James Everett Dutchka was arrested shortly after, trying to dispose of a coffee grinder that tested positive for ricin. He went down for 25 years. It later emerged that the thing that pushed him over the edge was Curtis falsely claiming to be a member of Mensa. Dutchka wasn't the only lunatic.
Okay, he's a crazy person.
In that spring. 1 month later, another batch of contaminated letters were intercepted on their way to Obama. These were traced back to Shannon Richardson, a bit part actor.
She looks like Poison Ivy.
Actress had been in The Walking Dead and The Vampire Diaries, but rather than turning bioterrorists, she had sent them to frame her hated ex-husband. As one newspaper dryly noted, today a marital spat developed into a full-blown bioterrorist attack on the White House.
Great.
See what we mean about ricin attracting fruitcakes?
Yeah.
Since the 2013 Clown Fest, ricin powder has popped up occasionally on the news, sometimes in scarier contexts and sometimes sillier ones. At the scarier end, you have the 2018 Cologne plot that saw an ISIS-inspired terrorist arrested with both bombs and enough ricin to kill dozens.
Dang.
At the less freaky end, you have the Quebec woman who tried to mail ricin to Donald Trump in 2020 because she wanted him to drop out of the presidential race. Needless to say, that letter didn't get anywhere near the president. Today, then, despite its extreme toxicity, ricin is most often associated with lonely weirdos who have watched too much Breaking Bad, weirdos with a grudge or a craving for
Sounds like it.
In some cases, both. Certainly, of all the bioterror attacks it's been used in inside the USA, ricin has performed miserably, killing a grand total of no one. But while it might be tempting to write the toxin off as little more than a joke, To do so would be foolish. There's good reason communist agents used ricin for assassinations, a good reason why militaries are drawn to it, a good reason why our African ancestors dipped their arrows in it tens of thousands of years ago. Lest we forget, ricin is one of the most perfect poisons known to man, a toxin with no antidote that leaves little trace after killing you. Sure, it makes a crap.
And it seems like you've got it's depending on how you use it, it can be kind of it takes a second to actually respond, so you can in fact do something with it and then you're gone. You're nowhere near them when they start to die. Like, it's an alibi maker.
Bioweapon in the hands of idiot karaoke instructors, but get it in the hands of someone.
Oh, karaoke. Okay. I thought he said karate. Why did I think he said karate? Okay, I need to... I want to just...
Strange. Down in Mississippi, a local judge also received a ricin letter, an unlikely target for any international terrorists. Then there were the letters themselves. Each ended with the Kevin Curtis. It gets crazier than that, though. Despite arresting Curtis, the FBI quickly figured out that he hadn't mailed the ricin. Instead, a local karate instructor...
Yeah, he said karate. Okay. Over here he said karaoke.
Perhaps the last word on this subject, with no antidote that leaves little trace after killing you. Sure, it makes a crappy bioweapon in the hands of idiot karaoke instructors, but...
Okay, so I don't know which one he was. I think he meant karate.
Hands of someone who knows what they're doing, and you'll see just how deadly it can be. Perhaps the last word on this subject should come from Anthony Fauci, who opened an envelope in mid-2020 to find himself covered in mysterious white powder. It had to be one of three things, the doctor remarked. A hoax, or anthrax, which meant I'd have to go on Cipro for a month. Or if it was ricin, I was dead. So bye-bye. So I really hope you enjoyed this absolutely horrifying video. Thank you to CuriosityStream for sponsoring it. If you did enjoy it, please do leave us a thumbs up below. Don't forget to subscribe, and thank you for watching.
Okay, great. So that was a biographics video, which weird. I feel like, why do I feel like that makes more sense for one of his different channels? Because I feel like the biographic stuff is usually about people, but like I guess he did some, like he has one on anthrax that's in biographics. Maybe he changed some things in the past couple of years to add different channels to do different types of things with. But anyway, so that was about ricin. Thanks so much for watching. I do hope you enjoyed it. Let me know what I should look at next, and I'll see you in the next video.